I came across this book. It's called The Search for Messiah. And it's written by Mark Eastman, who's Jewish himself, and Chuck Smith, the guy involved with Calvary Chapels and all. And I don't know why I picked it up, but it's an amazing book because it does something different. Instead of tonight just giving you a bunch of verses and everybody nods their heads and says, oh yeah, I understand those are Messianic verses. Because you've heard that kind of message before. I'm sure every pastor, when it gets close to Easter or Christmas or whatever, you sing songs or you hear messages about these passages. But what makes this one really unique is it gives you the Jewish response to those verses. When Christianity came along, the accusation, I'll show you here, the accusation is that Christians unfairly used these verses that we go to every Easter and every Christmas. You know where I'm going with some of these, like they're in Psalms and they're in Isaiah and they're Micah and all over the place, these references, we go, oh, see, that's Jesus. Well, are we just so focused, and we've been, had our heads spun around by people over the generations to say, sure, it's Jesus, don't worry about it, don't look at the context. What have Jews said over the centuries for those same verses that we look at? Notice, can we step away from our Christian faith and see how do the Jews react? So I thought that might be interesting tonight to see that, and you can get it all from the book as well. So just starting as far as terms go, the Torah, the first 5 books, people get that and the Talmud mixed up, but the Talmud are the Jewish thinkers over the years who have commented on the Jewish law and commented on the Torah. And then one of the big Jewish events was their translation after Alexander had come through the world and kind of Hellenized and brought Greek thinking to the forefront. So the Jews thought, well, let's get with the times here. Let's take our Hebrew Bibles and be able to show what's in it to more people. So they wanted to translate it into Greek. And so the Greek translation, which happened about 250 BC, it's a period of time. It's not like 1 year, but it's called the Septuagint. And that's the Bible that Jesus talks from. That's the Bible that Matthew quotes. That's the Bible that the New Testament people use, right? It's the Septuagint. So we'll come back to that, but I just wanted to lay out those terms. Everybody okay on that? Does that make sense? Let's take Isaiah 53, and I'm boiling it down just because of time, but these are the key parts of it. He was despised and rejected by men. We considered him stricken by God. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter. He was cut off from the land of the living. He was assigned a grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death. What sounds like Jesus here? Because a lot of people call Isaiah the 5th gospel.
Despised, rejected, pierced, crushed.
Yeah, you can, every line, right? Every line has, you go, that's Jesus. Even, look at that part there, he was assigned a grave with the wicked. Wasn't that the assignment was, this guy is no good, we're going to put him to death. That's a terrible way to go. You're hanging there with other wicked individuals. So he was assigned that, right? The Romans assigned that. But what happened? He ended up, who's the rich? Who's the reference there? Joseph of Arimathea, right? So he ends up, that's kind of an odd statement, right? You got something about the wicked and you got something about the rich. You're going, how did that work out? Well, it worked out, because of the New Testament. By his wounds we are healed. Led like a lamb to the slaughter. So we say, gee, that's Jesus. That's just obviously Jesus. What's been the Jewish reaction? Well, early commentators, this is pre-Jesus, the early commentators said it's the Messiah. Okay, we agree with that. I don't think we're misinterpreting things. But during the Middle Ages, now what's happened during the Middle Ages? Christianity's been around, and Christianity is now butting heads with Judaism, right? So they've come up with a new interpretation. They said it really refers to the nation. In fact, Jews today still, many of them will hold that view. It's the nation of Israel. Can I go back to this? Has Israel been despised? Yes. Has Israel suffered? Oh, yes. I don't think it works very well. I mean, after you get past the suffering and the tough times, is there anything on here you say, that doesn't work for a nation? What parts of it do you say probably don't work?
By his wounds we are healed.
Yeah, how in the world you take a nation and you put them through the Holocaust or whatever you do to them, how does that help others outside of that group? Does it help them at all? That doesn't make any sense. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter. Well, some Jews were, but some of them fought back. Did you ever read that book, Mila 18, by Leon Uris, that told the story of the Warsaw Uprising? The Jews knew they were done for, and they smuggled some weapons in, and they fought off the Germans a long time. It's an amazing story. Take a look sometime. It's the Warsaw Uprising. They didn't always go like lambs to the slaughter. And what's this business about a grave with the wicked and with the rich and the death? That doesn't seem to work at all. So I think that's an amazing stretch. But I mean, can you see what's happening? They want to interpret it in some other way than to say it's the Messiah. Question?
Took 53 out of their Bible.
Thank you. He's jumping on to something here at the bottom I think is fascinating. Many, now not all Jews, but many Jews, when they go to their synagogues, they have like readings for the year, like we might have in our churches. Not all, but many of them have taken Isaiah 53 out of their readings. And you can see why, right? Because it's Jesus, just obviously Jesus. And they're still so sensitive to that they've pulled it. Well, if it's the nation of Israel, wouldn't they leave that in there and say, it's pretty obvious it's our nation, so we'll put it in our service, but they're pulling it out. Now, some people today say it may be some other individual, right? They're still kind of waiting for this person to show up. But who in the world could say my death will cleanse and help an entire other group of people? I don't know how that's going to work out, but I think that's an interesting reaction. Here's a rabbinic scholar, quote, "It's beyond even the wildest credulity to believe that the resemblance in every detail between this prophetic portraiture drawn centuries before Jesus' advent and the story of his life, death, and resurrection could be mere accident or coincidence." Yeah, how is it possible? How did Jesus just happen to fulfill all of this stuff? What are the odds, right, that somebody's going to come along and fulfill all those things? How about Psalm 22? I'm sure you've heard this one before. Again, I'm shortening it a little bit here, but here's part of Psalm 22. By the way, how does Psalm 22 start? I didn't put that one up here. Here's a huge hint. Jesus quotes it when he's on the cross.
My God, why have
My God, why have you forsaken me? So this is not just Jesus off the top of his head. Do you see what he's doing on the cross? He's connecting, I'm Psalm 22 enacted up here on the cross. So that was not just anguish, although it certainly was anguish. So I didn't put that up here. But here's parts of Psalm 22. "All who see me mock me. All my bones are out of joint. My tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. A band of evil men has encircled me. They have pierced my hands and my feet." Does that sound pretty close to Jesus? Like everything up there? I mean, if you're up on the cross, you're being pulled down by your weight, and it's doing things to your shoulders and all, so you get the bones out of joint. Jesus says, "I thirst." You've got this tremendous loss of fluids when you're up there on the cross. Just from the whippings alone, he should have died. A lot of people died just from that. So you've got this tremendous shock. You're going through tremendous thirst up there. A band of evil men has encircled me. And of course, the key thing there, it was written before they had crucifixion. But what does David say? "They pierced my hands and they pierced my feet." So what's the Jewish reaction to this? Now, in a way, they're okay because apparently the Jewish phrase about "they have pierced my hands and feet" is pretty close to, like the lion, "they are at my hands and my feet." So if you read the Jewish Bible today, they substitute that second expression for the first one because, can you see, even in their minds, that's way too close to Jesus. Yeah. So that gets substituted out. But here's the catch. If you go back, right, let's go back pre-Jesus, the Dead Sea Scrolls, they were probably written before Jesus. Guess what they have? Pierced. How about the oldest versions in other languages? Pierced. How about the Septuagint? 250 BC. You think they knew what they were doing when they translated their own scriptures? They had pierced. So it's only been since Jesus that they went back and got kind of creative. I mean, it's pretty close, but they said, no, this is really what it means. But that's interesting. It's after the time of Jesus that they had to go in and play around with some of the things in their own scriptures. Nathan, did you have a question?
I was going to say, if they changed it to like the lion there at my hands and my feet, I was thinking about it. Even if that was the correct translation, that's still a form of crucifixion that the Romans had. It was an early form, or it was very gruesome. They would basically put someone out on a cross, put them out in the wilderness, and wild lions, wild dogs, and everything would end up devouring the person, or they would starve to death. So you look at that, it's still an early form of crucifixion, so they can't, it's like, well, you're still talking about crucifixion, just an earlier form of it. Crucifixion wasn't around in David's time, it was in Roman times.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do with that?
Yeah, it's still a problem, isn't it? How about Isaiah 9:6? This is one we do every Christmas. In fact, is the song starting to go through your head? The Messiah? Or unto us. Okay, never mind. You don't want me singing. I'm just saying it's going in my head. So here's what the wording is. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Look what it's saying. You're going to get this child, right? It's not praising God. It's this child is going to be called Mighty God. Wow, how clear can you be, huh? This is a unique, strange kind of birth to have Counselor, God, Everlasting Father, not just a baby. This is an everlasting Father. How does that happen? So what have the Jews done with this one? Here's the Jewish translation. At least one of them. Now this is since the time of Jesus. Wonderful in counsel is God the Mighty, the Everlasting Father, the ruler of peace. Can we go back one more time? It says he will be called these four things, but here it says his name is going to be Wonderful in counsel is God. Do you see that's a huge difference, right? Just that little is has changed it completely to say his name means he's praising God. That's not what it says in the original. In the original Hebrew, there was no is. Right? So that's been completely constructed to change the entire meaning. The word is just placed there arbitrarily according to scholars who've looked at the ancient documents. Here's another translation. Again, the Jews have taken a different way around the problem. Wonderful Counselor of the Mighty God, of the Everlasting Father, of the Prince of Peace. What happened to is? Now it's substituting of. So again, that child is not called God. He's a counselor of God, right? He's God's special, but he's not God. I mean, you see, this is another big thing there.
Just that God needs a counselor?
Like a lawyer?
Yeah, like a So, again, look at this professor. He's got a PhD in Hebrew language. The insertion, he says, when you put in that word of, is not justified by any rule of Hebrew grammar that I know. In the Talmud, right, this is after Jesus, at least 200, 300 years after Jesus. Here's what it says. His name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty, Judge, Everlasting Father, Prince, and Peace. We're back on good ground there, right? And this is from the Jews themselves who didn't get caught up in the clash of Christianity yet. This is like 300 AD. It's after the time of Jesus. So they knew about Jesus. I guess they didn't think of him as a big threat at that point to their religion. So they translated it pretty fairly here. It's a very special child. If he is everlasting, if he is Father, if he is mighty, if he is Judge. Right? Who's supposed to judge? God. But this child will be the judge. How about Genesis 49:10? Most people don't go that far back. They don't think at Christmas time or Easter going back to Genesis. But here's what it says. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet until he, Shiloh is the word they use, comes to whom it belongs. And most people go, I don't get any of that. There's a lot of references that are kind of in talk there when it comes to the early Hebrews. But scepter, from what they've written about as far as the Hebrew scholars, that represented kingship, right? The power to rule. And they saw that the express right to carry out capital punishment was the ultimate authority that you would have. Okay, so that's the scepter. Judah, of course, is the tribe. And then Shiloh is a reference to Messiah. So here's the history. Remember, this is written hundreds of years before the history comes in. The Jews lost the ability to conduct capital punishment by guess who? The Romans. And they got sick of the Jews. They were always arguing with the Jews, and they finally said, we'll take care of that from now on. That's why the Jews had to take Jesus to Pilate, right? They couldn't just go out and do him in. The Romans said, no, you're not going to get the chance to do this anymore. We're taking over. So that's like 6 or 7 AD. But then Jerusalem and all the records are destroyed when the Romans come in. How does number 2 up there affect that reference up above? If a Jew comes along today and says, I'm Shiloh, I'm the Messiah, what's the problem? You can't prove it. The records are gone. Right? Jesus comes along in 30 AD and people say he's from the tribe of Judah. He either was or he wasn't, right? You could go check that out. You could go talk. You could go to the synagogue or whatever it is. You could find out. The Jews were really big on lineage, right? But all the records are gone. Now, maybe somebody could just claim it, but they wouldn't really have the proof that Jesus had pre-destruction of the temple. What was the response of the Jews to that reference in Genesis? Well, we're back to the Talmud again. Remember, we're talking after Jesus. Woe unto us, right? So somebody is commenting about that Genesis passage. Woe unto us, for the scepter has departed from Judah, and the Messiah has not come. So guess what? They looked at their time period, and they said, he should have come, and we missed him. That's one of the saddest comments I think I've ever seen. Can you imagine you're a Jew, and you're writing that out, and you're looking back in time, and you're going, how did we do it? We missed him. He was supposed to have come, right? Because we knew that the scepter was the power to carry out capital punishment. That was taken away. He should have been here by now. Let's go to one that's a little more mathematically interesting, if you've got any math fans in here. The Daniel 9 prophecy. Again, I've squeezed it down. I haven't put everything here. From the issuing of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah, right, the Anointed One comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. The Anointed One will be cut off. The people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. So can you hear a prophecy kind of laid out here that the Anointed One is going to come, and then he's going to be cut off, killed, and then there's going to come destruction, right, to the city, not named, but we can probably figure that out. So I've got a bunch of numbers up there. I did it in sort of an abbreviated form, so stay with me. Most scholars that look at that say when they talk sevens, they're talking sevens as years, right? So groups of sevens, think of them as chunks of 7-year time periods. So what does it say? It's going to be 62 sevens and 7 sevens. You get 69 sevens, right? So that's what I'm doing at the bottom there, 69 sevens. You multiply that, and you got 483 years. Now, we got to stop for a second here. They went by 360-day years. Okay, so let's get days, total days that Daniel's talking about. So we multiply by 360. Now we got this monstrous number, right? 173,880. But we live, and we treat history as 365-day years, yes? Okay, so we're not doing any fuzzy math or strange math here. I mean, we're just trying to reconvert it to the years that we would understand. So we divide that huge number of days by 365. We get 476 years. Now, this is the controversial part. Do you notice Daniel doesn't say the decree of Artaxerxes. He just says from the issuing of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. But if you read Nehemiah, right, this is based on Nehemiah, which is way past the time of Daniel. Nehemiah goes to the king, Artaxerxes, and he's apparently a favorite. And Artaxerxes says, what do you want? He says, I want to go back. I want our people to be able to go back. And the Persians, remember last week we saw that thing from Cyrus? He said, I'll let you guys go. You know, I want the people to go back to their lands. And so the Persians allowed the captured people that they'd gotten from the Babylonians, they said, go on back. So Nehemiah goes back and has to try to rebuild that city. And the book of Nehemiah is really great, by the way. You ever read that? It's a great story of leadership because he's coming in, he's fighting these people that don't like him, and it's a mess trying to have a sword in one hand and mortar and trowel in the other hand to try to rebuild the city of Jerusalem. So anyway, Artaxerxes did have a decree, and if you use that as the starting point, now not everybody agrees, but it's sure fascinating. If you start with that decree, which a lot of Christians think it is, you start in 445 BC, because that was when the decree was, but how many years do you have to run ahead? 476. What does that take you up to? 31 AD. Gee, do you know anybody around 31 AD that was, I don't know, doing anything special in the Holy Land at that time? Now, some will look at that and go, yeah, you Christians, you're going nuts with your numbers again, right? So, but here's the deal. I think this is fascinating. What was the Jewish reaction, right? One more time. Well, how did the Jews interpret this? Is this just Christians twisting these numbers? The Qumran community, that's Qumran, that's as it's being excavated today, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. The whole community was abuzz because they expected the Messiah in their time, which is the time of Jesus, right? These are the people that went out and separated and didn't want to be around the Jews in Jerusalem anymore, and they went out to the dry, arid area of the Dead Sea, right? So they went out there just to be more holy and get away from the corrupting influence that was Jerusalem. But one of the reasons they went out there is they expected the Messiah to return any time based on Daniel. Here's some more reaction to that Daniel prophecy. It's not Christians twisting the Bible. The Talmud again, right? So these are Jews. These are not Christians writing this, and it's even after the time of Jesus. These times, right, the Daniel times, These times were over long ago. All the predestined dates for redemption have passed. Again, how sad is that? I mean, they looked at their calendars and they said, well, Daniel is saying, oh man, that's already passed. 200-300 years, we missed it. Maimonides, one of the most famous Jewish scholars of the 12th century, said, the end times have already come, but there's no sign of the Messiah. It's already happened. It should have happened. Where was he? And he urged rabbis, don't take any time in your synagogues. Don't talk this over with your congregation. Don't calculate the times mentioned in Daniel. Why would he say that? What?
It'll upset people.
Yeah, because they're going to go, wait a minute. We're living way beyond that. Where's this Messiah? So do you notice, again and again, it's a complaint from the Jews. We missed him. And then I want to end on this story, because this is an amazing story. It's the story of the red and the white ribbon. On the Day of Atonement, you know the basic story, I'm sure here, but the priest would sacrifice for the whole nation, and they would take a goat as a symbol for the sins, and he would put hands on this goat. And the story is that they would tie a red ribbon around the neck of the goat, and then they'd release it outside the city. That's where we get the idea of a scapegoat, right? So the sins fall on that goat. So the goat goes out, and somebody apparently would follow it around. And after some time out in the sun, of course, what would happen? That red would bleach out, and then it would turn white, but it became a symbol, right? Can you see that for the people saying, oh, good, God has honored what we did, right? The red of the sins have turned white, right? We have been, that's been accepted. So our sins have been taken care of. Well, let's go to the Talmud again. In 200 to 500 AD, this is one of the findings inside the Talmud. 40 years before the Second Temple was destroyed, the red wool did not become white. So they're reporting something that happened very different. They let that animal go, and they followed it around, and the story, at least, is, from their own works, right, from the Talmud, the story is, oh no, the animal's red stayed red. Now, what would account for that from a Christian perspective? They don't draw the same conclusion, but what would we draw from that?
Christ substituted for the animal.
You don't need the animal anymore, right? That's a waste of time. That's what Hebrews, the whole book of Hebrews is about. You don't need these things, right? Jesus is sufficient. You don't have to go through all these routine things anymore. And so from a Christian perspective, we go, yeah, I wish I could have talked to those people and told them why that did not turn white anymore. Okay, I know you can't see that, but so don't take notes because you can't see it at all. But there are so many prophecies. I just did a handful tonight, but if you find this interesting, there are so many prophecies in the Old Testament. Even if you just take the book of Zechariah, one book has at least this many references to the coming Messiah. Notice how some of these are really specific. Betrayal for how many? 30 pieces of silver. And then here comes Jesus, and here comes the story of Jesus and Judas, and he betrays him for 30 pieces of silver. If that's made up, they could have caught that and said, no, you're just trying to live off the Old Testament there. But I mean, look how specific these things are. Somebody did this one time. I don't know exactly how the math worked out, but how could you have one person fulfill all of these things, because during Jesus' time, he was touted as the Messiah. And if he was the Messiah, he had to fulfill all these requirements. Where he was born, the tribe he was part of, all these things. And somebody said your odds of winning the lottery are 1 in 259 million. I suppose if everybody's playing. The odds of a man just fulfilling 8 prophecies, right? Being born in the right place, the right time, the right kind of family, the right lineage. If it was 1 out of 8, right? If you could just fulfill these 8 prophecies, 1 in a bunch of zeros. I don't even know what a jillion, whatever you want to say. And it says Jesus actually fulfilled over 300. These are just, if you crunch the numbers, based on 8 prophecies. Nathan.
I heard an interesting thing, kind of a few months ago when I guess the Mega Million jackpot reached over $1 billion. Someone said that you had it wasn't as much as Jesus was, but they actually said the odds, you had a better chance of getting elected president than getting eaten by a shark than you did of winning the lottery.
Yeah. So, I mean, those zeros don't even mean anything to me. I just look at it and I go, that's a lot of zeros. Not very good odds there. So, let me end on this one because I like this song anyway. It's one of Tomlin's songs. But Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel. Yeah, he is the Messiah. He fulfilled it all. He's the person that we worship. And the Jews themselves actually are indirectly acknowledging, aren't they, because of the problems that they saw with their own scriptures and the ways that they were turning it. So have we twisted and ruined the scriptures? I don't think so.